We are in Judges chapter 15. Judges chapter 15. That may be just a tad loud there, fellas. Who's Steve? That may be a tad loud. All right. We're in Judges chapter 15, and we've been talking about, in the course of talking about Judges, we've talked about this cycle of sin that has happened. It starts with idolatry, and then oppression, and then people crying out, and then people being delivered. And we have looked at the various different judges. In chapters 3 through 5, we looked at the good judges, kind of the good judges, Othniel, Ehud, and Deborah. And then we looked at the okay judges, Gideon, because he was okay. And then the bad judges, we looked at Jephthah. And in this last part, we're taking a look at Samson. Now, here's the hard part with Samson. Over in Hebrews, in that Hall of Fame of faith that we call it, in Hebrews, Samson is noted as being a person of faith. And yet, when we look at the tidbits of Samson's life that we get, well, it doesn't really come through. It doesn't really stick out for us. And it's hard for us to kind of look at both sides of that and say, well, how in the world did Samson get in that Hall of Fame of faith and still do all this stuff over here? And I would only say that about that it's what I've come to in my head think is I don't want to be judged by 5 or 6 incidents in my life. I'd like to let my life to be looked at the whole arc. And God looks at the whole arc and knows where my heart is and knows if I believe in him and have done what he told me to do. Having said that, last week, Brother Josh gave us a rundown on that bachelor party that happened previous to today's lessons. And one of the things I want to make sure we understand and get noted is that several times he refers to that Philistine woman as his wife, but they were not yet married. Does that sound really loud to y'all? It's okay, fellas, it's really loud. You got to turn it down a wee bit. Because it sounds, there we go. Okay, that sounds a little bit better. Okay, because I felt like I'm yelling at myself. And only Barbie gets to yell at me. Anyway, all right. So several times he referred to as his wife, but remember, they are not yet married. So in ancient cultures, it was not unusual for someone to be, when they got betrothed to someone, what would happen is they were now husband and wife. They had all the privileges with the exception of one, and that was the sexual relationship. And all that was part of it. You remember Joseph and Mary back in Matthew 1:18 says, now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. After his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with a child of the Holy Spirit. And we remember what came of that. We remember the consternation that was caused because of that. But they were considered husband and wife. They hadn't consummated that relationship yet, but they were considered husband and wife. You recall that Samson told his parents, I found that cute little girl over there, go get her for me. And so they did, and last week we talked about that bachelor party. Now, in chapter 14 last week, notice that it says, so his anger, we're talking about Samson here. So his anger was aroused and he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion who had been his best man. We'll talk about that in a moment. And after a while, chapter 15, at the time of the wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat. And he said, let me go to my wife into her room. But her father would not permit him to go in. Her father said, I really thought you thoroughly hated her, Therefore I gave her to your companion. Is that not her younger sister? Better than she. Please take her instead. Verse 3, and Samson said to them, this time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them. Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, and put a torch between each pair of tails. And when he had set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and the olive groves. Verse 6, and the Philistine says, who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Tenamite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion. So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Samson said to them, since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you, and after that I will cease. So he attacked them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Then he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Edom. So let's go back. So chapter 19 or verse 14. So we remember that last week they had that big party. 30 men were at the party, and those 30 men were invited by Samson's wife. So it's not hard to infer that all the people there were Philistines with the exception of Samson, and that his best man was a Philistine. I don't know if you've ever been to a wedding before, but usually, the groom's party sits on this side and the bride's party sits on that side. You know how we do it. And have you ever been to a wedding where everybody sat on the bride's side and there was like nobody on the groom's side? And this party that they had with these 30 guys, okay? And remember from last week, they were testing Samson and he gave them that riddle. And so it seems like verse 20, and Samson's wife was given to his companion. Samson got mad and went back to his dad's house. All right? So verse 20 happened without Samson's knowledge. And by the way, what a really lousy thing for a father to do. That's what a lot here. Wife, you go with the best man. And by the way, what a lousy thing for the best man to do. I thought he was supposed to be the best man for a reason, Supposed to be the stand-up kind of guy. That's why you pick a good person for your best man. Her father, where we go. Chapter 15. So during the time of harvest, notice it was during the time of harvest. And as we know a little bit later on in the story, that's gonna be relevant. And it kind of indicates a different season than when the wedding happened. Usually weddings happen during non-harvest time. Well, you don't want to be having a wedding during harvest time. Why? Yeah, you don't want everybody partying and yucking it up while crops need to be harvested. Harvest comes first. Okay? So it seems to be a little different time. Notice that Samson brings a goat to her, and he brought a goat, probably part of the fulfillment of that contract marriage. We don't really think about that anymore, about people having dowries anymore. You marry a girl nowadays, and well, maybe. That's not that big of a deal in our culture today. A girl with a dowry, that's not thought of as much in our culture. But in their culture, it was a big deal. And apparently the goat was part of the contract. But Samson returns to consummate his marriage, and his wife's family was embarrassed. Her father said, no, you can't go in. He said, I really thought you thoroughly hated her. So he makes here a couple of reasons or excuses for his actions. He said, first of all, I thought you hated her, therefore I gave her to the best man. And then second, he said, hey, look, her younger sister's cuter anyway. Boy, what a dad, I'm telling you. You know? Yeah. and it kind of shows, honestly, it really shows that the women at that time, they were just commodities. And which makes Deborah, as a judge, even more highly thought of than we should. Or we should think of her more highly. Verse 3. So Samson gives a very blunt reaction to the younger sister. He said, this time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them. It's not going to be, you ain't going to put this on me. The father-in-law must have known what kind of person Samson was. And revenge was something Samson was pretty good at doing. But he says, this time, it's not going to be my fault. Years ago, I watched the Rambo movie. I don't know if you ever saw the Rambo movie. Okay. It was back in my younger days. I watched the Rambo movie. And in the second Rambo movie, it was called Rambo First Blood. And the big line of it, and Sylvester Stallone's big line, and it was, they drew first blood. You know, that was like his Adrian moment, you know. And that's what I kept thinking about when I'm reading this passage. They drew first blood. Y'all did this. Anything that comes of this is y'all's fault. So verse 4, he catches 300 foxes. How long does it take to catch 300 foxes? I have no idea. It's got to take a while, right? I don't know how long it takes to catch one fox. Okay? I'm assuming that it's going to take a minute or two, all right? It's not a day task. If I get mad at somebody, I might be mad at them for, 10, 15 minutes, you know? And then I kind of get over it. Boy, he was mad for a long time. He was mad for a long time. And now look, some scholars put foxes, explain that maybe foxes instead of jackals. I don't care. I don't care if it was foxes or jackals. It was still 300 of anything. I could get 300 pencils real quick, but pretty much foxes are any animal that you're grabbing together. First of all, you got to get them. Then you got to cage them. You got to put them someplace. And I think this tells us a lot about this plan. So here's his plan. I'm going to take a torch. First of all, I'm going to grab these foxes. Now imagine, okay, so I got 2 foxes over here. Okay, I'm assuming foxes, when you catch them, aren't docile. Okay, and now I'm gonna get a torch, and I'm gonna get their tails. And I'm gonna tie the torch on their tails, and then release them. You got to be thinking some thoughts to do this kind of stuff. And his thoughts for revenge did not subside due to his difficult task. Just because he had a heart. What I'm trying to get across to you is this took some time. This took effort. And look how much effort he puts into it. Now, remember when we talked about the time of the wheat harvest. So if you let the foxes go with torches on their tails, you can't really control them. I don't know if you've ever, y'all have done those little things where you maybe, I don't know. Anyway, where you take 2 people, you've seen that, where you take 2 people and you put a rope around them, and one of them runs that way, you play like a tug-of-war thing. Imagine 2 foxes. Obviously, these 2 foxes are not, first of all, they're not going to be happy they're caught. And then now they got a torch on their tail, so what does that make them do? Makes them run. And you can't really go, okay, fox, you run that way. And fox B, you run that way, okay? They're all over the place, and not really controlling them. So, not only do they burn up the grain, they burn up the olives, they burn up everything until somebody catches them, or the torch burns all the way through and separates them and they go their separate way or whatever. So when the Philistines had said, "Who done this?" And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law. Notice they call him the son-in-law. Remember, they hadn't consummated the marriage, but they're the son-in-law because of his wife was taken by her companion. So it seems that the Philistines acknowledged this Samson's rights. And I don't know what their deal is, but they sure. Remember when we were in 14, they threatened to burn the father with fire? I don't know if this was just a common practice or something, but they burned the father and wife. And I think it just goes to show kind of the evilness of the country. I'm mad at you, so I'm going to take it out, you know? And it really does talk to us about how sometimes, most of the times, evil begets evil. You know, I do something bad to you and you do something bad to me, and now I got to do something worse to you to get my point across, and then it turned into a Hatfields and McCoys, and I'm shooting at you, and I don't even know why. Yeah, and it's even, but it's far worse than that, because it goes, and you just have no idea why we're firing at one another. Samson said, "Since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you, and after that I will cease." So one piece of revenge turned into another piece of revenge, but Samson says, "Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. We got to put a stop to this." So he attacked them hip and thigh. Hip and thigh is an expression of a cruel, unsparing slaughter. And then he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Ethan. Ethan, by the way, is about 2 miles southwest of Bethlehem. And he seems to have retreated, and the idea there is, okay, I've taken my revenge, I'm done, and now I'm going to go away, so maybe we can stop these hostilities. And as we find out, that doesn't work. Verse 9. Now the Philistines went up and camped in Judah and then deployed themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" So they answered and said, "We have come up to arrest Samson, to do him as he has done to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Ethan and said to Samson, Do you know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this that you have done to us?" And he said to them, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." But they say to him, "We have come down to arrest you, that you may deliver you into the hands of the Philistines." Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves." So they spoke to him, saying, "No, but we will tie you securely and deliver you into their hand, but we will surely not kill you." And they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. Verse 14, and when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the ropes on his arms became like flax that is burned with fire, and his bounds broke loose from his hands. And he found the fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand and took it and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men." And so it was, he had finished speaking, that he threw that jawbone from his hand and called the place Ramath-leah. And he became very thirsty. So he cried out to the Lord and said, "You've given me this great deliverance by the hand of your servant, and now I shall die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised." And God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, and water came out, and he drank, and his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore it's called its name En Hakor, which is in Levi to this day, and he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Notice he says Lehi is used here as an anticipatory word. It means jawbone. That word means jawbone. And later he's going to kill 1,000 men. So some have estimated that they sent about 10 times that much. So can you imagine 10,000 people come to arrest this one guy? And they were willing to declare war if Judah protected Samson. So here comes this army, and all of a sudden they go, well, what is going on here? And they get into this little negotiation, and they said, we come to arrest Samson. And we're going to get him for what he done to us. So these 3,000 men, I'm always thinking about the amount of people that are numbered here. Why would 3,000 men have to go down to talk to Samson? I mean, I think 50 would be enough, in my head, maybe a small coalition, kind of thing, a couple guys, but they send 3,000. Now, I don't know why you send 3,000, but 3,000 is what we call a show of force, overwhelming force, more than you need, all right? Now, notice here that the people of Judah could have turned to God, but were willing to give up Samson to have peace with the Philistines. And it's interesting, he says, that they say to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? And again, I go back to the point that we've kind of made in Judges all along, is that notice how the people's first reaction is not to turn to God. They don't turn to God and say, hey, God, here's our situation, because they don't know God. They don't know who God is. And I want to bring up this point. There's a lot of times in our life that instead of saying, why God, we should get on our knees and pray to God. And too many times, we like to blame God for stuff, but we don't like to praise God for stuff. And if you get into a pattern of blaming God for things and never praising God for things or thanking God for things, that's not a good pattern to get into. Over in the young professionals class, we have that big TV board in there that we've been recording prayers with. And we put prayers that we want on this side, and then as things occur, we put prayers of thanks on this side. If you're always asking God for stuff, and asking God for stuff, and asking God for stuff, please don't get me wrong. Ask God for things. He wants you. All right? But by the very same token, you need to thank God for things too. You need to praise Him for things too. Especially stuff that you've asked Him for. All right? It's at the very least rude if you don't. All right? You're a parent. Most of you guys are parents. You're adults. If somebody keeps coming to you and asking you for stuff and asking you for stuff and asking you for stuff, and you keep giving it and giving it and giving it, wouldn't it be nice every now and then to hear, thank you? I had a rule when I was dating. She better say thank you. Hey, by the way, thanks for the meal. Yeah, no worries. Because if she didn't say thank you, you feed me, I'm going to thank you. By the way, I'm good. But they didn't turn to God. They should have, their first thing, they should have turned to God. But instead of that, they were willing to give up Samson. Yeah, right. I don't know, something, okay, well, now it's weird. All right. It's not me, Andy. Okay. All right. So some scholars are divided on whether this was a plot or just the men of Judah being weak. Samson did want to know that he didn't want to die by the hand of his kinsmen. You know, I'll go up there with you, just you don't kill me. So they tie him up with some nice new ropes. Again, later on these new ropes are going to be used again to tie him up, and they will be as equally as useless. Notice here that they bound him up with 2 new ropes and brought him up. Now, we never get a physical, did I remember that we get a physical description of Samson, but Samson probably a big dude, you know. Obviously he's strong, got some muscles on him, you know. They're probably scared of him. You know, it's very, you know. Probably. I mean, anybody that can gather up 300 foxes in no time, that's a bad dude. All right? So maybe that's why they sent 3,000 up there. I ain't going up there. You go up there. So when the Philistines arrived, they were already kind of in pre-celebration mode. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. And notice again, like we noticed back in chapter 14, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him mightily. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon him mightily. And he breaks those ropes like it's nothing. And then he goes to town. And he finds the jawbone of a donkey. And notice how the word says he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey. And that Hebrew word from the fresh word that is translated meaning moist. It was new, newly dead. The piece of skeleton wasn't completely dried out. It was still an effective and capable weapon. And he went to town. And he killed 1,000 of them. Okay, he killed 1,000. It's interesting to me, again, when you read commentaries, they did not stand in line to get killed, okay? All right. I don't know if you've ever seen, you ever watch these ninja movies where the guys are just standing there and you got the hero and then 7 villains around them, and they all wait their individual turn to go whack this guy, and he does his little ninja moves on him, okay? You ever watch the John Reacher movies, okay, any of those movies, or Jack Reacher, or any of those other movies like that? They're all just politely waiting their turn. If I got 1,000 guys and I'm going up against Rob, we're all attacking Rob at the same time. That's my plan, okay? So he chased some of these fellows down, okay, is the point I'm getting at. He whacked a whole bunch of them and chased them down. James Moffat, one of the people, commentary, says this is kind of a wordplay. With the jawbone of an ass, I piled them in a mass. With the jawbone of an ass, I have sailed assailants. The Hebrew there it's a poetic poem that Samson makes here. And so it was finished speaking. They threw the jawbone from his hand, and the place is called Ramath Leah, or the hill of the jawbone. And then again, verse 18, and notice, then he became very thirsty and cried out to the Lord, you've given me this great deliverance by the hand of your servant, and now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised. Remember what I was talking about earlier about all of this? You ask and you ask and you ask, and God gives us all of this wonderful things that God gives us, and the moment something goes wrong that we don't like, we are quick to complain. Well, it better not be our Christian nature. We need to be different. Just because, listen, I got news for you folks. If this is a shock to you, I hope it's not. Bad stuff's going to happen to you. Okay? Everybody hear that? Bad stuff's going to happen to you. Bad, evil stuff is going to happen to you. Some of it's going to be terrible and bad and evil and nasty. And yeah. People are going to die. We're going to get diseases. My hair is going to fall out. My sin's not going to be as luscious as it once was. Bad stuff. Some of us are going to get older and grayer. I know that's going to be impossible for some people, but Barbie cut my hair yesterday. I was like, well, that's a lot of gray hair. Wow, where'd all that come from? But the moment it happens, you don't go, oh God, why did you do this? Terrible. I'm going to die of thirst. You let me kill all these people. You're going to let me die of thirst. It doesn't seem that after all this nonsense, Samson even knows God either. So God answers Samson. And water pours out of the place of his victory. And I want you to notice here that Samson judged Israel for 20 years. As long as Samson remained a Nazirite and true to his vows, he was unconquerable. As long as he did what he was supposed to do, he was unconquerable. He never had an army. He always worked alone. And nothing much is spoke of, and the next chapter will be the tragic end that we all know about. But when he was doing right, when he was doing what he was supposed to, he was unconquerable. Now, God used him for his purpose. God used Samson for this purpose. And that was to kill the Philistines this day. And God should have got the glory for that. Because it never was about Samson. It never was about Samson. It was about the God came upon him mightily and gave Samson the power to do what he could do. It never was about Samson. And when Samson remained faithful to God, he was unconquerable. And there was no problems. In the next chapter, we'll see where he falls back into those old habits. All right, any questions or thoughts before we get into today's lesson? All right. Next week, we'll do chapter 16. Chapter 16, and don't forget about our friends and family coming up on March 13th through 15th with Joe Wells. Be sure to invite somebody. Thank you very much. May God bless you in your studies.